As of the Contemporary Cultural Climate 2026, Star Wars can be understood as more than a film series. It functions as a cultural space in which audiences engage with themes of identity, belonging, legacy, hope, and the meaning of home. Through stories centered on families, friendships, and generational conflict, the narrative universe provides symbolic frameworks that audiences may use to interpret their own experiences and values. Recurring motifs such as exile, mentorship, redemption, and a search for belonging reflect broader human concerns about family, purpose, and moral responsibility. Within the saga, belonging is often defined through relationships rather than geography. While planets such as Tatooine, Naboo, or Alderaan hold narrative significance, the concept of home frequently emerges through connections between characters, shared ideals, and collective struggles. As a result, Star Wars operates not only as entertainment, but also a symbolic narrative environment in which audiences interpret broader cultural questions. This study examines how Star Wars functions as a transmedia cultural space in which corporate narrative management, participatory fan culture, and debates over representation interact to shape meaning and identity within the franchise. Understanding Star Wars as a cultural space requires engagement with several theoretical perspectives from cultural and media studies. The concept of cultural hegemony, developed by Antonio Gramsci, provides a useful framework for examining how dominant institutions shape cultural meaning. Rather than relying primarily on coercion, hegemonic power operates by guiding what comes to be perceived as common sense within a cultural environment. Within large media franchises, corporate institutions influence which narratives, characters, and interpretations become widely recognized as legitimate. This process can also be interpreted through the work of Michel Foucault, whose analysis of discourse emphasizes how institutions regulate knowledge and shape what can be understood as authoritative truth. At the same time, audiences actively interpret media texts rather than passively absorbing them. Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding model demonstrates how audiences may produce dominant, negotiated, or oppositional readings depending on their cultural context. This perspective highlights the interpretive flexibility of media narratives and helps explain the diversity of fan responses within large franchises. Building on this framework, Henry Jenkins' concept of participatory culture emphasizes the active role of audiences in producing, circulating, and interpreting media narratives. Rather than remaining passive consumers, fans often engage creatively with forms of participatory practices. The interpretive openness of media texts also resonates with the work of Roland Barthes, whose concept of the death of the author suggests that meaning ultimately emerges through the reader's interpretation rather than the creator's intended message. Within large fan communities, narrative authority is therefore distributed among creators, audiences, and cultural discourse. And finally, Pierre Bourdieu's concept of capital, field, and habitus further explains how influence and participation are structured within cultural spaces, particularly in relations to status, recognition, and social positioning. Together, these theoretical perspectives provide the framework for understanding how corporate authority, audience engagement, and cultural debate interact within large media franchises. Often described as a space opera or science fantasy, Star Wars creates a fictional environment in which ideological and cultural themes can be explored through storytelling. Over time, the franchise has expanded far beyond its original cinematic format, developing into a complex transmedia narrative ecosystem. As Henry Jenkins explains, transmedia storytelling distributes different elements of a narrative across multiple media platforms, allowing each format to contribute uniquely to the expansion of a fictional universe. Star Wars exemplifies this model through its integration of films, animated series, novels, comics, video games, and merchandise. During extended gaps between film trilogies, transmedia texts play a crucial role in sustaining audience engagement. For example, Star Wars: The Clone Wars maintained fan interest after the conclusion of the prequel trilogy by exploring prequel-era events, introducing new characters and story arcs, and further developing established figures. Interactive transmedia products also allow fans to engage directly with the universe, reinforcing investment in the story world. When Disney acquired Lucasfilm in 2012, it's built on these existing transmedia foundations by implementing a coordinated strategy to develop existing Star Wars platforms and expanding into new ones. Within this environment, intellectual properties such as Star Wars function not only as narrative universes, but also as long-term economic infrastructures designed to sustain audience engagement across diverse media environments. Through the coordination of canon, character prominence, and narrative continuity, Disney and Lucasfilm structure which elements of the Star Wars universe receive visibility. In this sense, corporate management influences how audiences encounter and interpret the franchise. Despite strong corporate oversight, the Star Wars universe remains highly participatory. Fans engage with the franchise through a wide range of creative and social practices that extend beyond official media texts. Through these activities, audiences reinterpret narrative events, expand character arcs, and explore alternative perspectives. Fan humor and collective laughter, employing irony, exaggeration, and repetition, can also foster social connection and shared understanding within the community, while simultaneously puncturing the perceived authority of canonical storytelling and opening space for alternative interpretations. From the perspective of Stuart Hall, these practices demonstrate how audiences decode media narratives in dominant, negotiated, or oppositional readings, actively interpreting the meanings and implications of characters and events rather than accepting official stories uncritically. Similarly, Henry Jenkins' concept of participatory culture emphasizes that fans function as collaborators in circulating, reshaping, and extending media narratives. Online platforms allow audiences to debate canon, share creative works, and collectively reinterpret developments, showing that the Star Wars universe functions not only as a corporate media franchise, but also as a collaborative cultural environment shaped by audience creativity and participation. Participatory engagement with Star Wars extends beyond digital media into material culture. Physical objects associated with the franchise allows audiences to engage with the narrative world through tactile and imaginative forms of play. LEGO provides a particularly clear example of this process. By assembling locations, vehicles, and characters from the Star Wars universe, audiences physically reconstruct elements of the narrative world. At the same time, these sets encourage imaginative reinterpretation, allowing fans to create alternative storylines that diverge from canonical events. Through material play, fans may reenact scenes from films and television series, generate entirely new narratives, or choose to orchestrate their own visibility, deciding which characters and elements to emphasize, an agency that narrative cinema itself does not typically allow. This process transforms the audience from passive consumers into active participants in the franchise's storytelling ecosystem. Material engagement therefore expands participatory culture beyond digital platforms, reinforcing the multi-dimensional nature of fan interaction with the Star Wars universe.
Who are you? Who are you?
Who are you?
Because media representation contributes to the construction of identity, debates surrounding storytelling decisions within Star Wars frequently extend beyond narrative preference and become socially charged. According to Stuart Hall, identity is not fixed, but continually shaped through cultural representation and interpretation. Media narratives, therefore, influence how individuals understand themselves and their place within society. Debates surrounding representation became particularly visible following the release of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which generated extensive discussion within online fan communities. Similarly, the streaming series The Acolyte introduced new perspectives that prompted debate regarding tradition, authority, and narrative direction within the franchise. Such discussions illustrate how franchises increasingly function as cultural arenas where broader social questions concerning gender, identity, and generational change are negotiated. Within the Star Wars fandom, Pierre Bourdieu's concept of capital, field, and habitus suggests how influence, authority, and negotiation are structured. Individuals operate within a social field where recognition is distributed according to shared norms, yet interpretations and preferences frequently differ. Cultural capital derives from specialized knowledge or expertise, social capital from connections within networks or communities, and symbolic capital from prestige or recognition conferred by others in the field. A fan's habitus, the dispositions formed by personal history and early exposure, guides participation in debates, cosplay, fan art, or creative reinterpretation without fully determining behavior. Differences in habitus means that fans often interpret narratives differently, producing discussion, disagreements, and occasional conflict. These forms of capital are leveraged to gain status, yet they operate within broader institutional structures, such as Disney and Lucasfilm, which shape which stories, characters, and interpretations gain visibility and authority. Authority and participation are thus socially negotiated, emerging from the interplay between individual dispositions, community norms, and corporate influence, producing hierarchical structures in which fans navigate questions of legitimacy, authenticity, and belonging, while contesting and reshaping the boundaries of fandom. The influence of transmedia storytelling in the Star Wars franchise is evident in the development of key characters across multiple media platforms. Characters like Din Djarin and Grogu, introduced in The Mandalorian, illustrate how transmedia strategies can elevate certain figures to narrative centrality. They appear not only in the series, but also across merchandise, immersive experiences, spin-off series, digital games, and soon to the theatrical screen, reinforcing their prominence in the recent Star Wars media. In contrast, characters such as Maul demonstrate how transmedia can expand a figure initially occupying a relatively minor role. First appearing as a supporting antagonist in the prequel trilogy, Maul's story was developed across animated series, comics, novels, and video games, gradually transforming him into a complex character with a devoted fanbase, ultimately leading to his own spin-off series. Together, these examples show that meaning within the Star Wars universe emerges not solely from films, but through the interplay of narratives across multiple media. Although Star Wars offers a rich cultural environment for fan participation, this engagement occurs within structural and social constraints. Corporate strategies influence which characters and narratives receive visibility, potentially limiting the degree to which fans can shape official interpretations. Intellectual property restrictions also restrict the extent to which fan creations can circulate commercially. Participation is further shaped by economic and geographic barriers. Activities such as attending conventions, purchasing collectibles, and producing elaborate cosplay costumes may be more accessible to some audiences than others. The scale of the franchise's transmedia ecosystem can also create narrative fragmentation. With stories distributed across films, television series, novels, comics, and games, casual audiences may find it difficult to follow the entire narrative landscape. Despite these limitations, fan communities continue to reinterpret and expand the franchise through creative practices, demonstrating that participatory culture remains an important dimension of the Star Wars cultural environment. Star Wars functions as a dynamic cultural space where corporate storytelling, fan participation, and cultural debate interact to shape narrative meaning. Through transmedia storytelling, the franchise has expanded beyond its cinematic origins into a complex narrative ecosystem. Corporate institutions, such as the Walt Disney Company, play a central role in structuring narrative visibility and canon, guiding which characters and stories receive prominence within the franchise. At the same time, audiences actively interpret, challenge, and reinterpret these narratives through participatory practices such as cosplay, fanfiction, discussion, and material play. These interactions illustrate that meaning within the Star Wars universe is neither fixed nor entirely controlled. Instead, it emerges through our ongoing negotiation between institutional authority, audience interpretation, and cultural debate. The long-term resilience of the franchise therefore lies not simply in its storytelling, but in its capacity to function as a cultural space where multiple generations of audiences continually reinterpret identity, belonging, and narrative meaning within a shared fictional universe.